In a stunning escalation, China has abruptly frozen all outbound investments into the United States, with no advance notice. The directive, issued by China's State Administration of Foreign Exchange, halts every deal involving American firms, effective immediately. This isn't just a policy change, it's an economic weapon. Beijing cites escalating political risks and a need to protect national assets. But the timing is surgical. Just weeks after new U.S. sanctions targeting Chinese AI and chip firms, China is retaliating hard. According to CNBC, April 6, 2025, Chinese capital flows into the U.S. have already plunged over 80% since 2018. Now, they've gone to zero. Bloomberg's Asia editor Tom McKenzie called the move an unprecedented rupture in financial diplomacy, warning it could trigger a broader decoupling of capital markets. And Georgetown economist Alicia Garcia Herrero told WSJ this signals a full-scale pivot toward economic nationalism. Make no mistake, this is not routine capital control. It's a declaration of financial war. Chinese investment into the United States has collapsed by a jaw-dropping 95%, falling from a peak of $46 billion to just $2.3 billion in 2025, the lowest point in nearly 2 decades. This isn't just a number, it's a lifeline severed. From Silicon Valley unicorns to Manhattan's commercial real estate sector, American firms that once depended on Chinese capital are now on financial life support. According to the Financial Times, real estate transactions involving Chinese buyers have dropped over 90% since 2019, paralyzing entire metro economies like San Francisco and New York. Goldman Sachs analysts warn that U.S. tech startups may face a severe liquidity crisis within months without foreign capital infusion. Meanwhile, the U.S. stock market is unraveling fast. The Dow Jones has plunged over 3,000 points across 2 sessions, with today's drop nearing 1,700 points, marking one of the sharpest 48-hour declines in recent memory. And what's fueling this chaos? Trump's tariff war, reckless and economically radioactive. Veteran economist Mohammed El-Arian told Bloomberg, "This is not policy, it's provocation, and markets are reacting accordingly." Financial Times, real estate deals involving Chinese investors fell over 90% since 2019. Goldman Sachs, 2025 Q1 report. Startups may face severe liquidity crisis without capital inflow. Bloomberg interview, Mohammed El-Arian, April 2025. This is not policy. It's provocation. The U.S. public is now cornered by economic fallout, and the pain isn't theoretical anymore. In just 48 hours, the Dow Jones has lost over 1,700 points, confirming a 2-day meltdown that's shaking global confidence in American markets. Corporate America is bleeding. Apple, Qualcomm, and Tesla, once titans of international trade, are now exposed and vulnerable. China's latest counterstrike? A shocking 34% retaliatory tariff targeting U.S. exports, worth up to $143 billion annually. According to CNBC, the new tariffs will impact major U.S. exports from semiconductors to electric vehicles, industries that are heavily reliant on the Chinese market for growth and profitability. Tesla's Shanghai factory, once hailed as a symbol of global synergy, could now become a liability, with increased tariffs slashing margins and future output. Morgan Stanley warned clients today that continued escalation could wipe out $100 billion in market value across U.S. tech and auto sectors by Q3. And the White House? Still tweeting, still spinning. While Americans brace for economic impact, Beijing just made the first move in a long, punishing trade war. CNBC, April 2025. China's new 34% tariffs hit U.S. exports worth $143 billion, with major impact on semiconductors and EVs. Morgan Stanley Client Note, April 2025. Escalation may erase $100 billion in U.S. tech and auto valuations by Q3. Dow Jones data from WSJ, April 2025. Market fell 1,700 points over 48 hours. China has now imposed a sweeping tax on all American goods sold in its market. Their message? Crystal clear. The United States is bullying the world and destabilizing the global trade system. Just minutes after China's sharp rebuke, Donald Trump hit back, accusing Beijing of panicking. But the markets aren't fooled. The escalation is real, and the consequences are immediate. Following Trump's 25% tariff on $200 billion of Chinese imports, Beijing retaliated with a 34% tariff, specifically aimed at U.S. agricultural exports, soybeans, corn, wheat, processed food, and livestock products. This move hits directly at the heartland, crippling farmers who have already been struggling under high input costs and global uncertainty. According to Reuters, this retaliation could cost U.S. agriculture over $25 billion in lost exports in 2025 alone. The American Farm Bureau Federation warns that family-owned farms are now teetering on the edge of collapse. Meanwhile, China is swiftly shifting its grain imports to Brazil, Argentina, and Russia, locking in multi-year deals to replace U.S. supply. A strategic pivot that could permanently alter global trade flows. The irony? While Trump accuses China of overreacting, it's American farmers who are being driven into bankruptcy. Collateral damage in a war they didn't start. Reuters, April 2025. China's new tariffs could wipe out $25 billion in U.S. agricultural exports this year. American Farm Bureau Federation. Family farms across the Midwest are at risk of collapse due to trade war escalation. Bloomberg, April 2025. China finalizes multi-year grain import deals with Brazil and Russia amid U.S. tensions. American farmers are already grappling with skyrocketing input costs, climate volatility, and tightening credit markets. Now, trade retaliation adds fuel to a fire that's already burning out of control. According to the U.S. International Trade Commission, these tariffs could slash U.S. GDP by 0.5%, a staggering figure in a post-COVID recovery phase. Even more alarming, over 500,000 American jobs tied to export-dependent industries are now on the chopping block. From manufacturing hubs in the Midwest to port cities along the coasts, companies are scaling back operations, freezing hiring, and cutting wages, a ripple effect spreading rapidly across the entire economy. And for U.S. consumers, the pain is just beginning. Prices for food, electronics, and essential goods are already rising. Walmart and Target have warned that prolonged tariffs will directly translate into higher prices at checkout. For over 80 years, trade between the United States and the European Union has created millions of jobs and stabilized supply chains. Now, with this sudden rupture in U.S.-China relations, even transatlantic trade faces unintended collateral damage as markets react with volatility and distrust. U.S. International Trade Commission, 2025. Tariffs could lower U.S. GDP by 0.5% and threaten 500,000 jobs. CNBC, March 2025. Walmart and Target say import tariffs will push up consumer prices across categories. Financial Times, April 2025. Long-standing EU-U.S. trade ties face spillover risk amid U.S.-China trade war. China has now imposed a sweeping tax on all American goods sold in its market. Their message? Crystal clear. The United States is bullying the world and destabilizing the global trade system. Just minutes after China's sharp rebuke, Donald Trump hit back, accusing Beijing of panicking. But the markets aren't fooled. The escalation is real, and the consequences are immediate. Following Trump's 25% tariff on $200 billion of Chinese imports, Beijing retaliated with a 34% tariff, specifically aimed at U.S. agricultural exports, soybeans, corn, wheat, processed food, and livestock products. This move hits directly at the heartland, crippling farmers who have already been struggling under high input costs and global uncertainty. According to Reuters, this retaliation could cost U.S. agriculture over $25 billion in lost exports in 2025 alone. The American Farm Bureau Federation warns that family-owned farms are now teetering on the edge of collapse. Meanwhile, China is swiftly shifting its grain imports to Brazil, Argentina, and Russia, locking in multi-year deals to replace U.S. supply, a strategic pivot that could permanently alter global trade flows. The irony? While Trump accuses China of overreacting, it's American farmers who are being driven into bankruptcy, collateral damage in a war they didn't start. Reuters, April 2025. China's new tariffs could wipe out $25 billion in U.S. agricultural exports this year. American Farm Bureau Federation. Family farms across the Midwest are at risk of collapse due to trade war escalation. Bloomberg, April 2025. China finalizes multi-year grain import deals with Brazil and Russia amid U.S. tensions. American farmers are already grappling with skyrocketing input costs, climate volatility, and tightening credit markets. Now, trade retaliation adds fuel to a fire that's already burning out of control. According to the U.S. International Trade Commission, these tariffs could slash U.S. GDP by 0.5%, a staggering figure in a post-COVID recovery phase. Even more alarming, over 500,000 American jobs tied to export-dependent industries are now on the chopping block. From manufacturing hubs in the Midwest to port cities along the coasts, companies are scaling back operations, freezing hiring, and cutting wages, a ripple effect spreading rapidly across the entire economy. And for U.S. consumers, the pain is just beginning. Prices for food, electronics, and essential goods are already rising. Walmart and Target have warned that prolonged tariffs will directly translate into higher prices at checkout. For over 80 years, trade between the United States and the European Union has created millions of jobs and stabilized supply chains. Now, with this sudden rupture in U.S.-China relations, even transatlantic trade faces unintended collateral damage as markets react with volatility and distrust. U.S. International Trade Commission, 2025. Tariffs could lower U.S. GDP by 0.5% and threaten 500,000 jobs. CNBC, March 2025. Walmart and Target say import tariffs will push up consumer prices across categories. Financial Times, April 2025. Long-standing EU-U.S. trade ties face spillover risk amid U.S.-China trade war. Even in the midst of an ongoing trade war, policy, not politics, determines the real economic damage. And today, policy has turned into a weapon. China has drawn its economic sword, announcing a sweeping 34% tariff on all American goods and severely tightening exports of rare earth materials, critical components for tech, defense, and energy industries. Starting April 10th, this move sends shockwaves through global markets. The Financial Times reports that rare earth prices surged 26% overnight, and the Nasdaq dropped 400 points in early trading amid panic. This is economic warfare at the elemental level. The U.S. is heavily reliant on China for over 80% of rare earth imports, according to the U.S. Geological Survey. Cutting off this supply puts American manufacturers, especially in electric vehicles, semiconductors, and defense, on the verge of operational paralysis. As one former trade official told Bloomberg, "You don't just replace China's rare earth supply overnight. This is a five-alarm fire for U.S. industry." And once again, it's the people who pay the price, from tech layoffs to soaring consumer prices. What we're witnessing is not just retaliation, but a fundamental fracture in global trade balance, and there's no clear off-ramp in sight. Financial Times, April 2025. Rare earth prices rose 26% overnight after China's new export controls. U.S. Geological Survey, 2024. Over 80% of U.S. rare earth imports come from China. Bloomberg, April 2025. Trade official warns China's move is a five-alarm fire for U.S. manufacturing. Starting in 2025, every single U.S. import will be hit with a sweeping 34% tariff, an unprecedented trade chokehold. It's not just a policy shift, it's economic warfare. This freeze, affecting hundreds of billions in trade, comes despite earlier warnings. The U.S. Treasury Secretary had previously cautioned against igniting retaliation, urging global powers to step back from the brink. But now, China has done just that, igniting the flames with surgical precision. The fallout? American exporters, from industrial machinery to agriculture, are cornered. According to Reuters, over $300 billion in U.S. exports are now directly threatened by this retaliatory tax, sending ripple effects across every supply chain. Even President Trump, who once cheered tariff wars as easy to win, now lashes out against China's latest move, calling it a miscalculation. Yet public reaction to his remarks, riddled with inconsistency and dismissiveness, has been blistering. CNN Business reports that leading economists see this escalation as a self-inflicted trade disaster. With markets in free fall and strategic allies distancing themselves, the U.S. is facing the consequences of years of combative trade diplomacy. While global markets tremble under the weight of a spiraling trade war, President Trump becomes the punchline of a Hollywood roast. Legendary actor Robert De Niro, known for portraying mafia bosses with brutal honesty, takes the stage not in a movie, but in real life, delivering a blunt verdict. Trump is stupid. His critique, delivered without theatrics, landed like a haymaker. The crowd erupted in laughter. But beyond the humor lies a damning reality. When actors begin articulating the nation's economic frustrations better than its own leader, it's no longer entertainment. It's indictment. CNN and The Washington Post have both highlighted how Trump's off-script, often contradictory public remarks have directly contributed to market volatility. In fact, a 2024 report from Moody's Analytics attributes over 600 points of Dow Jones fluctuations in Q4 alone to Trump's unfiltered social media outbursts. Instead of offering stability during a crisis, Trump is fueling uncertainty, tweeting insults while the economy bleeds. De Niro's quip may have been meant for laughs, but the punchline hides a grim truth. Leadership that entertains while the house burns is not leadership at all. As the self-proclaimed stable genius continues to fumble through an escalating economic storm, even his public image grows shakier by the day. Robert De Niro, initially laced with sarcasm, drops the punchlines, and suddenly, the laughter stops. In a haunting moment, De Niro draws a historical parallel few dare to utter. Hitler, Mussolini, they were fools, clowns, and no one took them seriously until it was too late. The shift from satire to somber struck a chord. His warning? Do not underestimate what power in the hands of a reckless leader can unleash. This isn't Hollywood hyperbole. CNN's Fareed Zakaria recently warned that the erosion of democratic norms under Trump mirrors disturbing authoritarian patterns seen in 20th century Europe. Meanwhile, the New York Times editorial board cautioned that dismissing Trump's rhetoric as mere noise is a dangerous form of complacency. With the global economy on edge and tariffs threatening U.S. alliances and supply chains, the credibility of American leadership is under fire. When a veteran actor speaks more bluntly than most politicians dare, it's no longer just performance, it's a plea. Clowns, fools, comedians. History is full of them, until they seize power. Robert De Niro doesn't mince words. Hitler and Mussolini were underestimated, laughed at. Then they turned the world into a living hell. Now De Niro fires a final warning shot. Humor is fine. But if Trump continues to be underestimated, The one laughing last might just be the clown with the golden hair we're mocking today. It's not just Hollywood drama. A report by Brookings Institution warned that Trump's disregard for institutional checks and balances mirrors the populist authoritarian wave seen globally. Similarly, The Atlantic emphasized in 2024 that mocking Trump is easy, recognizing the threat is harder. This isn't a punchline, it's a pattern. Leaders once dismissed as jokes often rewrite history with blood, not ink. And if America keeps treating the danger like a meme, it may soon face consequences far more terrifying than tweets. A scary one. That's how Robert De Niro ends his tirade before landing a brutal punchline. Is Trump pretending to be stupid to confuse people? His answer? Number. He's not smart enough to pretend. It's funny, until it's not. Underestimating Trump as just a clown is not only lazy, it's dangerous. As CNN's Fareed Zakaria noted, Trump's unpredictability is not strategic. It's impulsive, and that's what makes it perilous. And according to the Washington Post, his stream of consciousness rhetoric has created a fog of confusion that blurs truth and weaponizes ignorance. The real threat isn't whether he's pretending. The threat is that this is real, raw, unscripted and unfiltered, and millions still buy into it. De Niro's final plea? People have to get out and vote and vote and vote. Because democracy isn't lost overnight. It's lost in silence, when laughter replaces action. Donald Trump, who constantly brags about being smarter than the generals and doctors, is likely now Googling the definition of stupid. He's the president who once said he wanted to punch someone in the face. Robert De Niro's response? Oh, I want to punch him in the face. The audience erupted, but this isn't just showbiz. It's the unmasking of a dangerous narrative. Trump's obsession with projecting dominance, punching, threatening, mocking, is classic authoritarian behavior. As CNBC noted in 2024, Trump's political brand hinges on aggression over policy, spectacle over substance. But the world's watching and responding. According to The Atlantic, global leaders no longer fear Trump. They brace for his tantrums like one would for a toddler with nuclear codes. De Niro's punchline might be symbolic, but it cuts deep. When leadership is reduced to brawling bravado, the biggest blow isn't physical. It's to democracy itself. A quick, sharp retort from De Niro had the audience roaring, like an action scene from his own movies. Trump may talk tough on Twitter, but face-to-face, he could very well end up being the smallest man Hollywood has ever seen. Don't talk to me that way. I'm the president of the United States. Trump's meltdown in that moment wasn't power. It was panic. The same man who prided himself on bulldozing over journalists and critics now revealed his deepest insecurity, not being taken seriously. As CNN reported in 2020, Trump's confrontational media strategy was never about facts. It was about fear, weaponizing chaos to dominate headlines. But the act is wearing thin. According to the Washington Post, more than 30,000 false or misleading claims were made during his presidency, turning the tough guy image into a caricature of denial and delusion. The bully persona might work in show business. In politics, it collapses under the weight of facts and ridicule. Declaring, "No one is allowed to speak to the president like that," Trump tried to reassert dominance. But De Niro and Jimmy Kimmel had already flipped the script, turning the world's most powerful man into a whining child in a supermarket aisle. Throwing tantrums, demanding silence, and reacting like he just lost his favorite toy, Trump didn't look presidential. He looked pathetic. Late-night shows have always poked fun at politicians, but Trump's reactions have become the punchline itself. According to The Atlantic, no other president has elevated late-night mockery into a political battlefield quite like Trump. He doesn't ignore the ridicule. He fuels it, attacking comedians like Kimmel in all-caps tweets that sound less like a leader and more like a jilted celebrity. Jimmy Kimmel is a loser. We would do Jimmy Kimmel. I'd do Jimmy. Trump rambled in one interview. It's hard to tell if he's threatening satire or auditioning for a roast battle. Even CNN's Brian Stelter noted, Trump treats comedy as combat. But in comedy, timing is everything, and Trump always hits back too late and too loud. Kimmel? I did him a lot, Trump recalled, describing how the late-night host once greeted him outside the studio, practically rolling out a red carpet. "Sir, may I bring you in?" he mimicked, desperate to paint a picture of loyalty lost. But once Trump entered politics, he claimed everything changed. "All they do is talk bad about Trump," he whined. That wasn't just bitterness. That was a public admission of vanity. In a moment that reeked of insecurity, Trump called Kimmel a loser, hoping it would sting. Instead, the insult landed with all the weight of a wet paper towel. According to the Washington Post, Trump's obsession with late-night TV reveals less about comedians and more about his fragile ego. Even Stephen Colbert couldn't resist, joking, "It's not a feud. It's a one-man pity party, and the man brought his own spotlight." As Trump rants, late-night hosts rake in ratings, and the world watches a former president unravel in real time. Trump was desperately trying to salvage his image by belittling others, going as far as to imply that disrespecting him should be a crime. This isn't presidential confidence. It's a tantrum disguised as leadership. Once the man who declared "I never fail," Trump now spends his twilight political hours firing off bitter tweets, attempting to rewrite history, claiming Jimmy Kimmel once bowed to him on the street. It's a narrative so delusional, even Fox News didn't bother to amplify it. According to The Guardian, this level of fabricated self-importance is a hallmark of narcissistic leadership spiraling under pressure. Hollywood didn't just laugh, they roared. This time, Wanda Sykes, a veteran comic and vocal critic of Trump, took the stage and demolished him with just one line. "You don't get to call yourself a winner when your biggest win lately is trending for a meltdown." Sykes's commentary cut deeper than any political ad. And once again, Trump's attempt at dominance only fueled the firestorm. In the battle between satire and ego, Trump is now the punchline. Sharp commentary isn't just for laughs, it's become a mirror reflecting the deeper dysfunctions of American politics. Comedian Wanda Sykes didn't merely roast Trump's personality, she questioned his very fitness for leadership. She quipped, "It's like people are still waiting for him to become presidential, like he's going to learn emotional control. But the man is 70 years old. I'm teaching those skills to my 7-year-old twins." This isn't just a joke. It's a brutal indictment of a man once entrusted with nuclear codes. As The Atlantic noted, Trump's emotional immaturity isn't a side effect. It's the central hazard of his leadership. The bigger concern is what this says about America itself. Why are millions still expecting a septuagenarian who's governed with spite and impulse to suddenly adopt statesmanship? That's not optimism. That's denial. And while comedians deliver these truths under laughter, the damage to America's global standing is no laughing matter. Trump is 70. He's not going to learn anything now. If he's a dick, he's just going to be a dick. Wanda Sykes didn't mince words, and the brutal honesty hit harder than any late-night monologue. But this isn't just about one man's temperament. It's a scathing critique of a political system that allows arrogance, immaturity, and unchecked ego to masquerade as leadership. As The New Yorker put it, in the Trump era, competence became optional, ego became law. Sykes doesn't stop at Trump. She calls out the entire brand. "His whole family annoys me, matter of fact." This frustration echoes beyond comedy. According to a Pew Research survey, 58% of Americans say the Trump family uses politics for personal gain. Her critique is clear. It's not just a presidency, it's a personality cult. One built not on vision, but on vanity. Tiffany Trump with a Secret Service detail? Wanda Sykes doesn't hold back. Nobody knows who she is. And yet, American taxpayers are footing the bill. This isn't about celebrity privilege. It's about how political dynasties exploit state resources. According to Washington Post, Trump's adult children had Secret Service protection extended 6 months beyond the end of his presidency, at a cost of $1.7 million to taxpayers. And then there's the myth of Trump as a self-made billionaire. Wanda calls it out clearly. He's a fake billionaire. Forbes confirms Trump's net worth dropped by over $700 million during his presidency, and his fortune was largely inherited, not earned. His narrative is crumbling. The man who promised to drain the swamp seems to have turned the White House into a family business where influence, protection, and privilege are handed down like heirlooms.